my belief, it was August of 1985. At that time, there was a friend of the family and I was a high school athlete, and he had asked me if I wanted to get into a fitness program, a running program, to be in shape. I said, sure. So the plan was that I was going to go out and run 5 miles in the evening. I lived on State Route 4 North, 4381. At that time, really the only place for me to run was this little side road just south of my house called Temple Road. If my memory serves me correctly, I was going to try to get running at like 8 o'clock. And then I procrastinated, and this happened and that happened. And by the time I was actually ready to go run, it was dark. You know, I was a country boy. You know, I was never afraid of the dark. So going out and running down a country road at night didn't bother me at all. I left my house, it was probably a little after 9, and it had just gotten dark. But it was a very clear night. I mean, it was really clear, visibility was good. I start down Temple Road, and at that time, on the right-hand side, which would be the north side of the road, there was corn. On the left side, which would be the south side of Temple Road, it was all beans. And it stayed like that all the way for 1 mile. So I made it down the State Route 19, and I was on my way back, and as I approached Flickinger Road on the way back, which meant that I had 1 mile to go, I got this weird feeling. It's this kind of feeling that you know something's wrong, you know something's watching you, and I felt like it was coming from those woods. So I stopped. I don't know why I stopped, but I stopped, and I looked into the woods, and I didn't see anything. I didn't hear anything, I didn't see anything. As I was about to start running again, in the cornfield, I see the corn start moving. Whatever it was really big, because a lot of corn was moving. I mean, a lot of corn was moving. And then all of a sudden it stopped. And I thought, wow, that's strange. And so I said, well, I'm gonna get out of here. So I take off running. And when I took off running, whatever was in the corn takes off running too. And that's what startled me really, because that's not how deer behave. Deer get scared, or they get startled, they get surprised, and they just take off running. But this thing started running with me. And when I say it started running with me, it was pacing me. And it kind of freaked me out, so I stopped. And when I stopped, it stopped. To this day, I think it would had to have been at least 3 rows in. And so I remember stopping and thinking, how does it know that I stopped? So I stood there, and as I stood there staring at the corn, I mean, not a single stalk moved. I mean, it was perfectly just still. Like this thing that was in the corn, like it was just perfectly still. And I don't know how long I stood there, but it spooked me. And not knowing what it was, I said, I'm taking off. So, and when I took off, it takes off simultaneously. And it's pacing me. And I start running faster, and it starts running faster. I realize this thing's stalking me. Whatever's in the corn. I realize when I get to Route 4, I'm gonna have to turn left to go home. And I'm just, assuming this thing stays in the corn, assuming it did. When I get to Route 4 and I turn left to go home, I'm gonna run right into it. I'm gonna intersect with it. And one of my best friends who lived just down the road from me, he was to the right. So my thought is, okay, I'm not gonna turn left and go home because I don't want to intersect with this thing, so I'm gonna cut right. So I made up my mind I was just going to stay on the road. And when I get to Route 4, I'm gonna cut right, and I'm gonna run to his house. So I realized that as I'm going to get there, I'm gonna run out of corn. So whatever's in this corn is going to come out before I actually get to Route 4. So I told myself, don't look. And the reason why I said in my mind, don't look, because I had no idea what it was. And part of me thought, if I looked, I might freeze up. I'm coming to the end of the corn, and I looked. I couldn't help myself. I could not help myself. As I'm running, I kind of turned my body like this to kind of like side shuffle. And that's when I saw it. This thing emerges from the corn, and it was about 6 feet tall because that's how tall the corn was. And it had the head of a dog, high pointed ears, and its shoulders were rolled like this. Like it had like terrible posture, like a person with terrible posture. Its shoulders were rolled and its arms were long. And I remember it just turned its head like this and looked at me. I saw its head, I saw the ears. Could I tell you what color its fur was? No. It could have been real dark gray, it could have been black, it could have been dark brown. I can't tell you what color the fur was for sure. The interesting thing is when I saw it, I didn't immediately think werewolf. I just didn't, because as we talked about, my frame of reference for what a werewolf was something I'd seen on TV8. It was a man with a flat face and it wore torn, tattered clothes. It did not look like what I saw. And the only frame of reference that I had was it looked just like the Egyptian god Anubis. That's the best way I could describe it. And when I saw it, I did kind of pause. I didn't freeze, but I did kind of pause. And I looked at it, like I said, there's weeds, wildflowers, and other stuff that runs right up to the corn. So all I could see was from like thigh down. So I don't know what its feet look like. I don't know what its knees look like or anything like that. But I saw its torso. But when it turned and looked at me, it just looked like it had this massive chest. So I take off across Route 4. So I'm gunning it as fast as I can. This thing has dropped to all fours and is chasing me. As I'm getting closer to my buddy's house, I knew that they had an in-ground pool and they had a fence around, a chain link fence. But as I'm getting closer, I look and I see the gate shut. I was like, oh. And I know if this thing is following me, my only option is I'm just gonna have to jump the fence. So I jump and I throw my feet up like in the air, like the old Fallsbury flop high jump. And I put my hand on the top of the fence and it was scalloped. I remember this. It had those, the scallops. And I pushed it down, and when I did, and then it popped back up, it just slashed me right across my side. I land in like a stumbling motion, and I just dive headfirst into the pool. And I'm blowing out my breath, and I'm going down, and I can still feel it sliding down because the pool was 10 feet deep. And I'm sliding down, I blow all the air out, and I get to the bottom, and I somehow pinch my nose, and I look up, and I'm fully expecting to see this thing with the rolled shoulders and the dog head and the big chest sitting on the side of the pool. But it seemed like a long time I was on the bottom of the pool, and I'm looking up, and I'm looking up, and I don't see anything. So I'm like, oh, thank God. I climb up out of the pool, and I run, and I rip that door open as hard as I can. And my buddy was sitting there. He screams, and I scream, and I slam the door. And I remember screaming, turn the lights out, turn the lights out. And he has no idea what's going on. So we turn the lights out, and I'm just looking out the windows. I'm looking out the windows, thinking, is this thing out there? The next night, I played cards with guys on the basketball team, and I told them the story, but I did not tell them what I saw.
I vividly remember the next night, we were at a friend's house. So we're all out in the garage, outside playing cards. It was a bunch of us guys that went to high school together. And he's telling this story about outrunning and having something pacing him in the cornfield. We were all teammates, and what teammates do is we give each other a bunch of crap. He probably already got enough crap from us as it was, so he didn't want to get any more. And you don't want to be called crazy, But he did tell us the story. I remember the story, and he's asking, like, what do you guys think this was? And nobody had an answer. When
I did the research, I found out that on Flickinger Road, just down on Flickinger Road is at least 2 Indian burial grounds. So that made me start thinking in a totally different way than what I'd always thought. For years, I had thought this is a flesh and blood creature, that it's wolf-like or dog-like, and no one seems to catch them because they're really fast, they're really smart, they're really stealthy. Now my mindset has switched to, I think these are supernatural creatures. That's my opinion. This thing emerges from the corn, and it was about 6 feet tall. It had the head of a dog, high pointed ears, and I remember it just turned its head and looked at me.
The shadow that you seen was bipedal, and it almost looked like a giant canine. It didn't have any, human features to it. 7 to 8 feet tall, very broad shouldered, and it had this canine looking head to it.
I've been around predators my whole life. Most of your big game predators that you have in the States, these things don't act like that. You look in these things' eyes, these things look like they're trying to figure you out.